Hello, welcome to this video on Bodhicaryavatara, chapter 7, verse 53. I will read it without the text on screen first and then put the text up on screen. Vishadakrita nishcheshta apada sukarananu yuttitas cheshtamanastu mahatamapi durjaya. And again, with text, here we go. There we are. Vishadakrita nishcheshta apada sukarananu yuttitashcheshta manastu mahatamapi durjaya. Now, you may have spotted a discrepancy in the two ways I pronounced vyuttitas cheshtamanastu, this sh here. The first time I said vyuttitas cheshtamanastu, second time vyuttitas cheshtamanastu. Strictly speaking, I think you could say that it should be pronounced as a sh, as a palatal sh, preceding the ch. However, one does often hear it on these YouTube recordings of Sanskrit chants. You very often do hear Brahmins, native Indian Brahmins, pronouncing it something like Vyutitas Cheshtamanas with a s rather than ch. It's not important. Just notice that that discrepancy does exist. So Vishadakrita nishcheshta, the root chesht, means just to make a movement or a gesture. The word is most often found in adjectival form and nominal form, that is the noun cheshta, which I've highlighted here, which means a gesture, and also in the adjective nishcheshta, motionless. That is the prefix nis, which by sandhi becomes nish and nih or nir, meaning without. It's a negating particle, saying something is without something. Mala, stain. Nirmala, stainless, spotless, immaculate. Cheshta, a gesture. Nishcheshta, not making any gesture, which then means motionless. Now I see I've just lost my text boxes. Let me pause while I get them back. Oh, I was saying here we are, and now they've gone again. Okay, hopefully I've got them back now. Oh, and they've disappeared. Oh, well, we'll just have to do it without the text boxes. They keep disappearing off the screen. Yeah, sorry for that slight technical disruption. Let's look at the composition of this Vishadakrita Nishcheshta, that's rendered motionless by Vishada, that's despair or despondency. I will call up my iPad for you. There we are. The noun is cheshta, a gesture, a movement. That's from the root chesht. We're now going to make an adjective of it by prefixing this privative particle, that's the nis, which becomes nish before a ch. Note now that although the noun is a feminine noun ending in a long a. When it becomes the final member of an adjectival compound, that's a compound word that stands as an adjective, the long a is gone, it ceases to be a feminine noun, it simply becomes an adjective, nischeshta, with a short a at the end, and it will now decline like any other adjective ending in a short a, irrespective of the fact that it started life as a feminine noun, cheshta, and that, of course, would decline throughout as an ordinary feminine noun. So I say once it becomes an adjective, nischeshta, like any other adjective in a. So nischeshta is motionless. Here we have krita nischeshta, made motionless, and that has pretty much the same force as in English. Motionless, rendered motionless. In other words, you're not just motionless because you've decided to be, you've been made motionless by some external factor. That's the force of krita nischeshta. Now, we can further enlarge this compound, the krita nischeshta. So your krita nischeshta, for what reason? So we can now put on another noun at the beginning of the compound, vishada, which is you are vishada krita nishesha. In other words, you are krita nisheshta, rendered motionless, because of vishada. I've explained the word vishada in verse 2 of this chapter. It's from the, I won't go through it all again in detail. It's from the root sad, meaning to sit, and makes its present tense sidati, slightly irregularly like that, sad sidati. And it means not only to sit, but in contrast to standing, it has the idea of flopping, giving up, not being able to carry on. So it has this dual meaning, ordinary sitting, and also this idea of collapsing, sitting down on the job, not standing up and getting on with it. And with the prefix vi, this separative particle, that suggests something like sitting apart, rather the same imagery as in the English falling apart, so collapsing and falling apart. That's the idea of vishada. So that it's often translated as despair or despondency. That is okay so far as it goes, but this is another example showing us that translation never quite cuts it, because the English word despair, via French désespoir, and it ultimately from the Latin meaning being without hope. So this is not quite the same. Vishada is just like collapsing in a heap, losing all your strength, losing your ability to withstand difficulty. That more is the meaning of Vishada. Going to pieces is the notion. Now, apad, let me call up the text again. There we are. Apad is a noun of the consonantal declension, and so the stem ends in a consonant. And for masculine and feminine nouns ending in a consonant, the nominative plural, you just add ah to it. So apad singular, apada plural. It's the nominative plural. Apad is, in classical Sanskrit, a feminine noun. Moni Williams only attests it as feminine, but here Shantideva is treating it as a masculine noun. And the reason we know it's masculine, if all we had to go on was this word apada, okay, apad singular, apada plural, can you tell from the word and the shape of whether it's masculine or feminine? No, you can't, because the word in the word whose stem ends in a consonant can be masculine or feminine, then the ah would be the plural for them both. So you can't tell simply from the shape of the word here whether it is masculine or feminine. Where we tell that he's treating it as a masculine, because in this Mahatam, he's talking about great apada, and he's used the masculine form of Mahatam. Mahatam, genitive plural. If it were feminine, he would have said Mahatinam, because the feminine of Mahant, feminine singular is Mahati, and he would have had to say Mahatinam for the genitive plural. The fact that he's written Mahatam shows that he's treating it as a masculine. So we've got Apada Sukara, literally means easy. Sukara, kara doing, su particle meaning good, and very often means easy. Nanu, verily, is it not? Rather the same as the Hindi. Hena, French, n'est-ce pas? It's just like an emotive particle. How have I translated? Yes, is it not? Indeed, certainly. Verily, I say unto you, Nanu. So, Vishada Krishna Shesha Apada Sukarananu. That means Apada, calamities, misfortunes, Sukara, literally are easy. It means here it's easy for them to gain access. They will easily come into somewhere. Apada Sukara, they can easily happen. So, misfortunes are easy, means will easily occur. Vishada Krita Nishcheshte, in a person who is nishcheshta, motionless, krita nishcheshta, rendered motionless, vishada krita nishcheshta, rendered motionless by vishada. The reason this word here, it's the locative, but we have it here ending in an a. That's why in its without sandhi, so I've written it down here, vishada krita nishcheshte, the a simply becomes a before a following long a. That's why it's nishcheshta apada and not nishcheshte apada, which would breach the rules of sandhi. The second line now, vyuttitashcheshtamanas mahatamapi durjaya. Tu here is here it's used in its most common full sense. It's like a contrastive particle. You see, if you're motionless through despair, calamities will easily find their way to you. Tu, however, by contrast, remember it's in an enclitic word, it's got to follow the word that it governs. However, by contrast, vyuttitashchestamanastu, vyuttita is one who has stood up, in other words, one who exerts himself. Cheshtamana, that's the present atmanepada participle of one who moves. It's the same word, cheshta, cheshtamana, cheshta, noun, meaning a movement, cheshtamana, moving. That's because it's an atmanepada verb. Let me just call up Manuel Williams for you. Yeah, this is interesting. Here we are. Look at Manuel Williams. Chesht. Now, cheshtati. Okay, so according to Manuel Williams, it can be either parasmaipada, cheshtati, or atmanepada, cheshtate. We can see here that Shantideva is using the atmanepada form, because that is the atmanepada present participle ending mana. Otherwise, it would just be in the nominative singular cheshtan, and then the accusative cheshtantam. But cheshtamana is specifically the atmanepada, the kind of the middle voice present participle. Remember, Pali students, this ending mana, this present participle ending, is exclusively and rigidly reserved for the Atmanepada, the middle voice in Sanskrit. In Pali, it's used indiscriminately for Atmanepada and Parasmapada, and that's one of the reasons why we can correctly say that the Atmanepada and Parasmapada, although strictly observed in Sanskrit, have become blurred in Pali. So Vyuttita, so sta, to stand. Ut, sta, to stand up. Now, as a rule of Sandhi, where you get two stops, ut and the t of sta, where you have an s coming between them, the s drops out. So instead of ut sta, we say utta, and that's how it's done in Sanskrit. And now we've got the separative particle vi, up and away, the idea of making a movement, getting up from where you are, exerting yourself, responding to a situation and being active. Vyuttita. What does it put it? Exerting oneself. Vyuttitaschestamanastu. However, one who exerts himself and who moves, gets on with it, cheshtamana, that person, durjaya, is difficult to conquer. This durjaya here is an adjective qualifying the person who is vyuttitaschestamana. So that person is durjaya, is durjaya, difficult to conquer, hard to defeat. Mahatamapi. Now I've done a note. That's right. Durja Mahatamapi. In English, we've dealt with it also, I think, in a couple of verses ago. If it's in English, we'd say it's difficult for me to do something. In Sanskrit and Pali, you have to say it's difficult of me to do something. It's just how it's done. So the person who exerts himself and so on is durjaya, difficult to conquer, mahatam api, even for big ones. Big what's? Big apada. So apada, misfortunes, are easy in one who is rendered motionless through despair, despondency, falling apart. However, the person who is vyuttitaschestamana, who is, strives, exerts himself, moves, is durjaya, difficult to conquer, for the big ones, mahatam, api, even, mahatam api durjaya, even for the big misfortunes, calamities, that person is difficult to conquer. Mahatam, genitive plural, genitive singular is nominative singular, masculine is mahan. The accusative slightly irregular because it has a long R. Mahantam, not mahantam. The genitive plural mahatam. Feminine singular mahati. Feminine genitive plural therefore would be mahatinam, which we would have expected to see because this is an adjective qualifying the apada. So this demonstrates why that Shantideva has treated it as a masculine. Something that Panini would certainly not have approved of. Right, so I will read it to you once more. Vishadakrita nishcheshta apada sukarananu vyuttitashcheshta manastu mahatamapi durjaya. And that concludes this video on verse 53.